Hi, I'm Natalie Bouchard, and you're listening to Inside NC Labor, a podcast designed to inform and educate North Carolina citizens on the role that the Department of Labor plays in state government. Hi everyone, welcome to Inside NC Labor. I'm joined by my fellow Public Information Officer, Dolores Quessenberry, and today we're also joined by a very special guest, Labor Commissioner Josh Dobson. How are you today, Commissioner?
I'm doing well. It's been a good morning so far. I hope you guys are.
I am, yes.
Doing great. We're excited to have you on our show.
Very excited to have you.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, Commissioner, if you don't mind, would you start us out by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, grew up in western North Carolina, half of my childhood in McDowell County. My dad remarried somewhere around 8th grade, spent the second half of my childhood in Avery County, married to my wife, Valerie, for 19 years. And we have a daughter, Kennedy, who just turned 16 in January, and she lets me know who the boss of the house is, so she keeps me humble.
That's great.
My family lives in western North Carolina. My mother lives in McDowell, and my dad and his family, my stepmother, they all live in Avery County.
Another commissioner from the western part of the state.
I know. There's something in the air over there.
Carolinian. Commissioner Dobson, would you tell us just a little bit about your professional background?
Sure. I started in public safety in 2003. I actually started as a correctional officer there in McDowell County. Worked my way through school as a correctional officer, going to school at night primarily for my undergrad and graduate degree. I spent a little time in the community college system. My political experience, I decided to run for county commissioner in 2010. There was 2 Republican incumbents running, and then on the Democrat side, there was a long-term businessman, wealthy businessman, a 5-term incumbent Democrat, and a former EMS director, and me at 28 years old in 2010. So those odds were stacked against me for sure. But it was a good year, and fortunately there were 3 spots, and I got the 3rd spot, and I was just blessed to be a county commissioner for 2 years there in McDowell County. And then timing, and you'll hear this throughout this conversation, I say this a lot, timing and luck is everything in politics. You can work hard, but if the timing or circumstances are not right, it's not going to matter too much. So 2012, Governor McCrory was successful, and my predecessor in the State House was appointed to a position in the McCrory administration. So in January, I was fortunate enough to be appointed to that position, January of 2013, to the State House. And I served in the State House for Avery, Mitchell, and McDowell counties, the 85th district, from January of 2013 through December of 2020. And then obviously was fortunate enough to be elected Commissioner of Labor in November of 2020, and I've been here probably 6 weeks, I think, now. 5 or 6 weeks. So it's been a crazy journey, but I've just been so blessed to get to be here and get to be the North Carolina Commissioner of Labor.
Wow. That's an impressive journey. It's very impressive that you put yourself through undergrad and graduate school. So what motivated you? Because I'm sure you had some long nights and days. What motivated you during those times?
So I was searching, as many young people were, about what it was I wanted to accomplish, what it was I wanted to do. And I struggled early on. I was in high school, started varsity sports as a sophomore all the way through a senior. But I got into the real world and went for that first job interview. They never asked me how many touchdown passes I called while I was in high school. They didn't care about that. And I was like, who knew? It was a shock to me that nobody cared anymore. So I really started thinking about what it was that I wanted to accomplish with my life. And really 3 things happened to me, one, and it had an effect on everybody, was September 11th. It really just, it affected me in a way that, and I guess we all could say this, but it certainly affected me in a way unlike anything I'd experienced before or after. It made me think about, how short time is, and if you wanted to accomplish something, you get a small window to do it, and then your time has passed. So that really had an effect on me. And then when I went to work at a manufacturing facility back in western North Carolina, it was night shift. And it gives you a lot of time to think, doing repetitive work like that. And I really started thinking about what I wanted to look into for the next 40 or 50 years. And then I read a book by John Kennedy, who was a senator at the time, Profiles in Courage, when he wrote it. And he talked about public service, and he talked about doing what he thought. Well, the book was about United States senators who did what they thought were right at the expense of their party and their own selfish gain to do what they thought was right for the country. And most of those senators were lost to history, but they really had a profound effect on the country with the decisions they made. So those three things together really affected me in a way that said, you really need to think about what it is you want to do and what kind of contribution you want to make. And that's when I began to think about public service. So to answer your question, keeping those three things in my mind always, I was thinking, okay, I can continue to do this, or I can go to school, and knew that education was the only way that I could have that type of opportunity. So that's what drove me, even when I didn't want to, because the hours at the prison were 5:45 in the morning to 5:45 at night, and then class would start at 6:20, and I would go till 10:20, and then I would go home and get up and do the same thing the next morning. So it wasn't always easy, but I always kept those three things in the back of my mind, and it kind of drove me to say, okay, you either do this or you don't, but it's your choice, and that's kind of how it went.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is amazing.
I have to say, as a young person in government, that's very inspiring to hear and learn. So thank you for sharing that. And obviously, you've touched on this a little bit. You've worked, various levels of government, county commissioner, state legislator, and now as labor commissioner. So you've touched on this a little, but tell us why public service is so important to you.
Yeah, I guess because you can really have a positive impact on people's life at all levels of government. When I was a county commissioner, I worked with our EMS director at the time, who said, and I won't go into all the details, but he said, Josh, we are getting paid less for overtime that we're working than we did for our normal shift. It was a weird way that EMS workers were paid. And I said, that's not right, and we're going to fix that in the budget. So we were able to appropriate more money to the budget to make sure that they were paid adequately as EMS frontline workers, and that just had a direct effect on somebody else's life. And then in the state house, one thing that comes to mind I was able to work on as appropriations chair was to work with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library that we appropriated funds to put a book in every child's hand in North Carolina up until the age of 5. So that just has a real effect, a positive impact on other people. So public service is a way that you can really, as the cliche goes, make a difference, but it's a way that you really can make a difference. And then as Commissioner of Labor, every day to have our department be responsible for 4.5 million lives, and we have to get it right because so many people depend on what we do every day. It's an opportunity to look back and say you did something pretty special, and what we all do here at the Labor Department, to me, is something pretty special.
Exactly. So when did you decide you wanted to run for Labor Commissioner?
So I get that question quite a bit, and it's pretty direct. I knew that I was going to do 4 terms in the state house and not some term limit pledge or anything. I knew I did not want to be Speaker of the House. I did not want to be Majority Leader. I wanted to chair a major policy committee, and I wanted to serve as a main full chair of appropriations and really try to dig into the details there. But I didn't want to stay in the state house just to have a title. By that time, that meant nothing to me to have a title. So I knew after 4 terms that I wasn't going to run again. In fact, I'd already announced to my friends that I wasn't going to run again. And the only thing that really had an appeal to me beyond the state house, at least in elected office, was Commissioner of Labor. We already had a great Commissioner of Labor, and I had the assumption that she was going to run again. So I was prepared to support her as long as she wanted to be here. But then I think it was March maybe of 2019, she announced that she, as you all know, she announced she wasn't going to run again. So me knowing that I didn't have to give up my state house seat because I was going to give that up anyway, I didn't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it. I had to get the sign off from Valerie and Kennedy, but after that we were full speed ahead, and I didn't have to put a lot of time into it because I'd already thought about it. And I said, I'm not going to run for an office just to be running for an office. It's going to have to be the right office and the one that I want to serve in. And labor was it. And
wow.
The reason for that is, one, because of the consequential nature of what we do here, responsible for the safety of 4.5 million lives every single day. That to me meant something. And then the other thing about labor is the broad nature of what we do here, whether it's wage and hour, whether it's compliance, whether it's consultative services, whether it's retaliatory employment discrimination, whatever it may be. It's so diverse and broad what we do here at Labor. It gives you an opportunity to do something different every single day and not the same thing. Again, timing and luck is everything. And if it would have been some other council estate, it would have had no interest to me. Opportunity met what it was that I wanted to do, and it just worked out. And fortunately, I'm just so blessed to be here.
Oh, wow. It sounds like it was just meant to be.
I feel that way. Well, and I always said I didn't know if I was supposed to win or not, but I knew I was supposed to run just by the way things worked out.
Wow.
So I know you've been here for about 6 weeks now. What are your short and long-term goals for the department?
So I think we can start with the 5-year strategic plan that was already put into place. I mean, the goal 1 was reduced by the end of 2023 rate of workplace fatalities by 2%. And goal 2, reduced by the end of 2023, the rate of workplace injuries by 5%. And I spoke to our Deputy Commissioner Beauregard last week about this, and we're meeting those goals, and we'll continue to work towards those. So that's my long-term goals, at least over the next 4 to 5 years. The other long-term goal that I want to have is making sure that people across our state know that the Department of Labor is going to do the right things regardless of party. I campaigned on bringing a civility to our politics that I believe is lacking, where both sides are so dug in and there's such vitriol for those that see things different than you do. That's not the way that I'm going to govern, and that's not the way the Department of Labor is going to be. We are going to listen to all sides and then make the best decision we can, but we're going to do it with a level of civility in our politics. That is something that's a big deal to me. So after my 4 years is over, regardless of what else they say about my time here, I want people to say that about our department, that we were based on customer service. It didn't matter what party the person was from, and we did not degrade or name call those that might see things different than the way that I do or the way that the department does. So I want to bring a level of civility to our politics that I think is lacking at the state level and the federal level. And then the final thing in the short term that I want to do as much as I can, it's been more difficult with COVID, but one thing that I really want to try to do is just to get to know the staff and develop those relationships. I don't think that's a bad thing. As a manager, I don't think it's a bad thing to have those relationships with your staff, not just the senior staff, but those that work in the revenue building, the others that work in the admin building, and then getting out into the field, working with our elevator inspectors and our compliance officers and our wage and hour enforcement officers. So short term, I want to get to know the staff. Long term, I want to continue with goal 1 and goal 2, and also bring a level of civility to our politics.
Well, that's awesome. what do you want our listeners to know about the Department of Labor?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, that other than what I just mentioned about that civility, I want the people of North Carolina to know that we are going to be based on customer service as well. This is the way I ran my office in the State House, that if you're calling about unemployment or you're calling about workers' comp that we as a department don't have oversight for, I don't want our department to just say, well, that's not us. If you're out there and you need unemployment and you're entitled to unemployment, you don't know necessarily who to go. You would think you would go to labor. So even though we can't help directly, I want our department to put them in contact with who they need to be in contact with. Not even necessarily just give them a number and say, here you go. If there is someone we can contact on their behalf, I think we should do those sorts of things. So that's the kind of customer service. When I say that, that's one example of what I want our listeners to know and what the Department of Labor is going to be.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think Dolores and I can absolutely confirm that we do get a lot of questions via social media and email about unemployment and workers' comp and things like that. And
exactly.
That's a goal of ours to get people to where they need to go, regardless of whether we can personally help them or not within the jurisdiction of the Department of Labor.
Great.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another question we see a lot on social media is about the elevator certificates and how they're going to be updated. So can you explain, Commissioner, how the new certificates will be circulated throughout the state?
Sure. Before I talk about that, let me talk more broadly about what we do with standard inspections, particularly with regard to elevators. On a personal note, this is very important work that we do with the inspections of elevators, but it's kind of taken on a role of its own, and I know that. And social media has already started as we've changed out some of the elevators with myself and Director Petty's signature as well. But I want to say I don't want that to define my administration. That is a crucial part of what we do here, but that's arguably a small part of what we do. So I don't want my administration to be defined by the elevator man. I want it to be about compliance. I want it to be about wage and hour. I want it to be about retaliatory employment discrimination, how we handle the COVID-19 pandemic, how we handle migrant workers getting here safely. So I don't want that. It's critical, and I play along with it too, and it's funny, and all my friends laugh at it, and I get a text every day about it. But it is my goal to not be defined just by my picture in an elevator. So I'll preface with that. But saying that, by the end of this year, how it works is the inspections are done annually, but all of them are not done during the same month. I think we've got maybe 24,000 elevators in North Carolina that have to be inspected yearly, and it's designed to be inspected by the month. Every month, when that inspection is done, the old placard will come out and the new placard will come in. So by the end of December of this year, all of the placards will be replaced with mine and Tommy's signature and my picture there in the elevator. So that's kind of how that works, and people have asked me, why? I've seen it in some, but not in all. And I said, well, there's no reason to change them all in the first month. You can just do it as you do the inspection for that month. So that's kind of how that came about.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Commissioner, before we wrap up?
I always say this, and it could be argued that it's a little bit corny and cliche, and that's okay, because my daughter tells me I'm corny and cliche, so that's okay. It is never lost on me the opportunity that we have here. When I walk across that street every day to come into this building, I do it the same way that I walked into the General Assembly. What an opportunity we all have here to serve North Carolina and to be the North Carolina Commissioner of Labor. Not for 1 second has it been lost on me since I was sworn in, and if I have anything to do with it, not for 1 second throughout my term and however long I'm here, I'm not going to take that for granted. So I'm just so grateful and so honored to work with you all and everybody at the Department of Labor, and I'm so grateful and so honored to be the North Carolina Commissioner of Labor. I've enjoyed it so far, getting to know the staff, and people ask me, is it what you thought it would be? And for the most part, it has been. I mean, there's learning curve, and we're trying to get better every day, but it's been kind of what I expected. So far I've loved it.
That's wonderful.
Glad to be with you guys and talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dobson.
Thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. Remember, your safety is our priority.